For most of us, after we got saved, we walked away from some of the things that we used to do. But after a while, we find ourselves doing the same things that we promised ourselves we will never do. And we begin to feel like we are not having enough willpower. Only if we were a little bit more disciplined, only if I had a little more willpower, I could do these things that I want to do. So we come and we promise God that, Lord, I will never do this again, only to find ourselves falling into the same pattern of behavior. And my own journey, I struggled with this early on in my Christian life. And I would talk to people who have been Christian longer than me, and I would ask them, they could all identify with what I was going through. But the typical answer was that, David, you cannot live the Christian life. You need the Holy Spirit to do it in you. But nobody ever explained, well, how is that to be done? I want that, but how is it to be done? And later on, I honestly felt like they don't know what they're talking about, that nobody has taught them how to live the Christian life. And this is one of the most important questions that we need to answer in our Christian journey. How do we live the Christian life? You see, this frustration was even felt by Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul in Romans 7:15, he goes on to say, I don't understand my own action, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Is this your experience? Or are you able to relate to this? I think all of us can relate to this. But then in Romans 7, verse 16 and 17, he tells us what the problem is. He says, if I do what I don't want, it's no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. Now here the word sin is not the act of sin, but it is a principle, or for lack of a better term, a nature, a force inside of us. You see, Paul says sin dwells within me. This is a present tense, an ongoing resident. An act does not live inside of us. We commit an act and it's done. But here, sin is within us. It's a resident. You see, in Galatians 5:17, Paul uses a different terminology, but expresses the same idea. He goes on to say, for the desires of the flesh are against the spirit, and the desires of the spirit are against the flesh, to keep you from doing the things you want to do. So here, he identifies it, that it's the flesh. It's the flesh, or sin as a principle, as a force, as a nature within us that keeps us from doing what we want to do. It's almost as if we have an enemy within us. Now, is this true even of the believers, the people who have genuinely become born again? Is this true of them as well? And the answer is yes. In Romans 7:21-23, Paul says, when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand, for I delight in the law of God. An unbeliever does not delight in the law of God or his instruction, but a believer does. All Romans 7, the majority of it, is Paul's experience as a Christian, not as his life in Judaism. Because I know friends that they would point out that this is Paul's experience before his conversion. But if you read it, and you read the grammar and the tenses, you see he's talking about his present experience as a Christian. They're all present tenses, not past tense, that this is how my life used to be when I was in Judaism. Then he goes on, but I see in my member another law or principle, waging war against the law of my mind and making me captive to the law or principle of sin that dwells in my member. So Paul noticed that there is a functioning principle inside of him that wages war against the law of his mind, and he brings him into captivity. And this is sin that dwells in his member. We cannot overcome our flesh or our nature by willpower. We eventually succumb to it. But if we truly want to live a normal Christian life, a Christian life that is satisfying, we need to figure out what does God says that how we need to deal with our flesh or sin nature, as sin as a nature. Now, how did we end up with sin as a nature or the flesh? Before the fall, Adam was created with original righteousness. In Ecclesiastes 7:29, we read, God made man upright. The Hebrew word means straight, right, directed correctly. This is the original righteousness in the way Adam was made. But Adam, his nature was properly oriented toward God. But after the fall, the moment Adam turned from God, the human nature itself became disoriented. Our orientation became away from God rather than the way we were toward God. Now we decide what is good for us and what is bad for us, and we are dominated by our desire. And in Romans 8 verse 7 goes on to say, the mind of the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. You see, the mind of flesh is not neutral toward God, but it is in active opposition to God. It's against God. The flesh does not just drift away from God, but it sets against him by nature. It does not submit. Now in Romans 8:5, it says, those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh. The flesh has its own mindset and agenda that is self-directed. Now, Charles Hodge points out that this is the whole orientation of a person. The act of disobedience by Adam caused our orientation to become away from God. And then sin became the engine that continues and deepens our independence from God. You see, even as believers, we see these struggles within us. The orientation away from God was the sin. Sin caused our orientation to go away from God. But sin as an indwelling principle then became the ongoing engine that continues and deepens our independence from God. You see, for many years, I wanted somebody can explain to me, how do I deal with my flesh? How do I overcome my sin nature? You see, that's why it's so hard to find people who resemble Jesus. The Christian life, ideally, is not just about accumulating knowledge, but it is to look and see what God has done and how it is to be appropriate. And in my judgment, the priority is learning how to deal with our flesh, with our sin nature. But what we are typically occupied with, when is the rapture going to happen? When is the second coming? Who is the Antichrist? These are the things that we occupy ourselves with. But the real important things we left out. And most people can explain to us, how do we deal with flesh? How do we deal with our nature, sin nature? And that's what we want to discuss in the next couple of videos, because I think it takes more than just one video to explain. But we want to go in this journey of figuring out how to deal with our sin nature and flesh, and how to live truly a normal Christian life, a life that we be on a journey of godliness to resemble Christ. So until next time, may the Lord be with you. May He watch over you. May He make His face to shine upon you. This is David Sami with a Christian Journey.